Welcome to Monday. It's the 1st of February, 2021. Well, there's a lot to talk about, folks. We left you on Friday talking about major weather pattern changes this week, and those are still on the table, but the waters are muddy. There's a lot of disagreement in the computer modeling, and there's a lot going on with the weather pattern, so you're going to want to stay informed day in and day out over the next several days to try to get a handle on things. We're going to have a very mild start to the week. Boy, temperatures today and tomorrow and through the first half of Wednesday will just be delightful for this time of year for the first couple of days of February. But then things definitely are going to trend colder. But the real question is how cold is it going to get? Who's going to get the worst of the cold? That's one big question mark. So we're going to have mild temperatures through Wednesday. We have a trough coming in off the west coast. We're definitely going to see some mountain snow coming in Wednesday into Thursday, some snow on the plains and colder temperatures. But again, it'll be the high country. What looked like was going to be a four corners low midweek is now turned into what we call an open wave. Just a trough coming through. It will produce winter weather, but it's not going to become that upslope storm that it looked like it was going to when we talked to you late last week. Now, the trend continues to look colder as northerly winds aloft is going to be pushing in this weekend. There's a lot of disagreement on the weekend with our long-range modeling. Some modeling brings in a surge of Arctic air, upslope snow, and some really cold temperatures for the Rocky Mountain West this weekend. Other modeling is taking the worst of the cold into the Corn Belt, into the Midwest, into the Great Lakes, possibly bringing record cold temperatures to places like Chicago this weekend and next week. So we could either be on the edge of the Arctic air, in the Arctic air, or it may go to the east. And we'll show you that here in a minute. Even though it looks like the worst of the cold will go to our east this weekend, the long term for February is still cold. It's still looking like the trend is certainly colder than it's been for the first half of February. And do expect the weather forecast to really be highly variable and changing. So don't really go past 3 or 4 days on a long-range forecast because it will likely change on you. This is where we are today. With a nice broad area of high pressure over the Intermountain West. This is why it's going to be so nice. They've got a storm to deal with here in the mid-Atlantic and parts of southern New England, while the Rocky Mountain West is going to be under this high with mild air coming out of the desert states and out of California and into our neck of the woods. So if you need to travel, if you need to be outdoors, boy, today and tomorrow, a really good opportunity. But here comes in our next two areas of low pressure. This is a really complicated pattern here, and this is why the modeling is having such a difficult time. This area of low pressure is going to swing in as we get into late during the day on Wednesday into Thursday morning. And you can see it. This is by Wednesday afternoon. The trough comes in, and we have what is going to be what we call an open wave trough. We're not going to have that four corners low, but we're going to have cold northerly air come in behind it, and a good slug of Pacific moisture will bring a nice shot of snow to the plains and mountains in some areas as it comes through. So what we're going to see is great weather today and tomorrow into early Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night into Thursday, it's going to be a lot colder. By Friday, the winds aloft are coming all the way in from the north slope of Alaska, and temperatures are going to be much colder. So the door opens up, and notice this blue area here. This is basically an elongated north-south stretching polar vortex here of some very cold Arctic air. The winds aloft will come in and bring in that Arctic air into this area right here as we get into Thursday night, Friday, into early Saturday. But this is where we start to see the weather really different based on what computer model you look at. Notice this circle of blue here. This is some really, really cold air here. This is Arctic air. And the Arctic boundary, I'll show you in a minute, goes right up to the continental divide. This northerly wind flow is good to make it snow in the mountains and to some extent some areas on the plains as well with this Arctic air. This is the European model for Sunday morning. This is the US or GFS model for the same time. Look at the displacement. We have the coldest air here right over North Dakota on the European model, but over Lake Superior here on the American model. That is a lot of a difference. That is Well, few hundred miles, and even a little bit more than that. When you have a big difference like that in the computer modeling, you really have low confidence. This would put many areas of Montana, Wyoming, and northeast Colorado, Nebraska, western South Dakota in Arctic air this weekend. This would certainly be colder, but out of the Arctic air, more towards the Great Lakes and Midwest. So when we see a difference like this, our confidence for the weekend is really rock bottom, and you can really see it highlighted on the temperature forecast. The European model shows the Arctic boundary just to the Continental Divide, right on the divide there. West of the divide, it's colder, but not nearly as cold. These are all sub-zero temperatures. Anywhere you see purple is a sub-zero temperature by Sunday morning. But the American model, look where the purple is. It's much further east, and if you look at the Continental Divide, colder air is backed up against the mountains, but the deep cold is here. So literally, this is a couple 100 miles difference between who goes below zero and who doesn't go this weekend. However, the overriding trend for the Intermountain West is still colder. But whether or not it's going to be bitterly cold, we're going to have to see what tomorrow looks like. So as we go into the next second half of the week, the next 5 or 6 days, it looks colder. Snowfall forecast through Sunday morning is pretty good. You can see the mountains getting some snow. There's going to be a little bit of snow on the plains here with that front Wednesday night into Thursday, and maybe with that northwesterly flow coming in over the weekend. But we don't have that big snow that was showing up on the models last week for the plains. Now, as we go out further, we talked about at the beginning slide of this podcast that even though we may see the Arctic air miss this region this weekend, there's more potentially coming behind it. And that's certainly what we see. We see another low coming in by Monday night into Tuesday of next week. That'll drag in Arctic air. There's another low coming in on the backside of it. That may drag in Arctic air. So the long-term trend, once we get beyond Wednesday, still looks colder. And this is showing Monday, Tuesday, the 15th and 16th of February. This is another polar vortex, bringing another potential Arctic shot into the nation's midsection. The question for the Rockies is whether or not these Arctic air boundaries can come over the divide or up to the divide or just stay this way. The good analogy is like waves on the beach. Arctic air, since it's heavier and more dense, is close to the ground. So you have to have Arctic air deep enough to climb the high elevations of the divide. These Arctic air masses need to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 feet thick to get over the divide to make the Rockies really cold. But if these Arctic air masses slip along and east of the divide, that deeper Arctic air ends up here and we're just on the edge of it. So what happens is the Arctic air comes in like waves on a beach, then retreats off to the east, temperatures warm up, then the Arctic air comes back in like another wave and it gets colder again. And so what happens is you get these wild fluctuations in temperatures when you're on these Arctic air boundaries, and that's certainly on the table looking forward. But overall, February is going to be a colder month. Well, we've got a lot more to talk about tomorrow. Stay tuned. We'll keep you updated. Have a